what's that going to look like then? If you're saying there's not going to be much of middle class existence, what do you see then?
First of all, I don't think this society can continue along the same lines ad infinitum. And so you're talking to the host of the briefing. And so, in the course of the last 7 months, what's happened? Italy, the Netherlands, even in some Scandinavian countries, and elsewhere, you have the election of people who are, the American media says far right peoples. Geert Wilders, who just won the election in the Netherlands, which has been one of the most liberal, places on earth, just elected someone who's an anti-liberal, who won the election, and got to put together a coalition and all the rest. But the point is, this is a wake-up call. People won't march off a cliff indefinitely without some pushback. Now, does this mean cultural recovery? I'm not saying that. I am saying some pushback. And so I don't think things can continue. But, here again, Travis, I would simply say if we didn't have the New Testament, I would really despair. And I guess that's a nearly comprehensive statement. On every score, I would despair. But, Paul was writing to Christians on the underside of the Roman Empire, not on the top side of the Roman Empire. So evidently, Christianity can do really well on the underside of a civilization. I'm not praying for that, but I think we have to be willing to face that.
Do you think, though, that Constantinian temptation is always there, that we actually do better on the underside when we're not?
I will not make that argument. I simply will not make that argument. I think that is one of the most fundamentally stupid arguments in modern Christianity. So I'll simply say, it is. It is. I think it's a fundamentally stupid argument. And I look, the older I get, the less I prance around these issues. If you have a chance to save human lives, save them.
Of course.
If you have the opportunity to conform the law to protect human rights, do it. And that means that I am not going to apologize for hoping that the culture will be more driven by Christian impulses than less. And that means that in a system, I would rather have a Christian king than a pagan king. I will be with Luther here to say, I would rather have a pagan king who upholds Christian truth and Christian understandings on these issues than a Christian king who didn't. But, those who look to Constantinianism, I'll simply say, look, there's a price to being on the underside of the culture. There's a stewardship to being in the driver's seat of the culture and at every point in between. But I simply say, I think it's irrational to look at Western civilization and say, I really wish that the Roman Empire continued pagan.
Of course, when you put it that way, yeah, it sounds foolish.
Well, and I know what you were doing, and I know what you're citing. And so when you look at people like Leslie Newbigin, I mean, they're onto something, and you have to give him credit for having been on both sides of the equation. For having been someone raised in the apogee of the British Empire, the apex, I should say, and then also being a bishop in India. And so I think his seminal insight was to come back and say there is such a thing as a post-Christian culture.
Mm-hmm.
It's harder to reach than a pre-Christian culture. But in the middle, that's a Christian culture. And look, it comes with all kinds of moral problems. But I'll simply say, I still would contend for, I would rather have a Christian prince than a pagan prince driven by paganism. And if I have a chance to save the unborn, and that means electing people who will commit to save the unborn, and who will affirm what marriage is, you go down the list, then I'm going to do that without apology. And yet, by the way, this is where our modern conversation among some evangelicals about post-Constantinianism and kind of a neo-Anabaptism. Well, my family originally was Anabaptist, Lancaster, Pennsylvania. The houses are still there, and a lot of Mohlers are still there too. I'll simply say that it is not an accident that Anabaptist communities thrive when they're surrounded by non-Anabaptist communities who actually do have police cars and do have standing armies. And so I say that with respect to my relatives. And evangelicals who want to be Anabaptists, that is not what they really mean. They're buying into it's consumer Anabaptism they want. All right, boy, I have gotten deep into it with you. Anyone else we can offend while we're at it?